What is going on, guys? It is Brett, and it is time for another pop culture crisis movie review that is not, in fact, a movie review. Today we are going to be talking about episode 3 of The Acolyte. Gosh help us all.
Hi, crisis actors. It's Mary. Yes, and this episode is entirely backstory, which we were all introduced to already in the first 2 episodes, just based on the conversations these characters were having. So we confirmed that, they do think we are stupid and that we need to have everything shown and told to us explicitly for us to understand what's going on. There was no present day shots, nothing relevant to the actual crime thriller or murder mystery, which has already been solved too.
Do you think that that's going to end up being like there'll be a double cross or something added to the mystery? Because it's very hard to believe that there's such a disconnect between marketing and storytelling that they would pitch it as a murder mystery and then have the murder mystery solved in episode 2. Or is it just
Judging by the IQ points of Leslie Headland, I don't think it's actually that hard to believe. They're just figuring out a way to keep this show going after they already solved the murder mystery in the first episode, like maybe within the first 20 minutes if you have a couple of brain cells. So this is basically Forces Female, the episode. We're on Brendock, and we get introduced to the coven of witches that
Young
raised Osha and May. Yeah. First of all, why is May just a child psychopath? Like, why is she just evil from birth? Well, there's no origin story as to why she's evil.
The point of it was they were looking for a way to differentiate the characters so that you didn't look at them and have trouble recognizing which one is which. So they had to give them distinct personalities, but instead of giving them the distinct personalities of 2 people that you might actually like, one is shown to be faithful to her home planet and wants to remain there, and that's May. And then Osha seems to be intent on exploring beyond where she lives, but May takes great affront to the idea, almost like the idea of like a writer from Hollywood's parents saying they shouldn't leave home and they should stay in their small town, but they want to go to California.
I would believe that if it weren't for the fact that this episode really drives home the idea that the Jedi are basically colonial oppressors.
Yes, they're colonizers.
Right. Like, I didn't think it was going to turn out like that when I originally saw these takes about the Acolyte, but this is the episode where you're really shown the idea that the Jedi are evil. First off, the child actors they chose, I'm sorry, they're just corny as hell. They cannot give a performance. They cannot deliver a line.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Again, anybody who's watched any amount of movies or television know that when you're casting child actors, it can often be a wash. It's very hit or miss. And for this show, it is unfortunately a miss. There's not a lot there. But, the thing is, I saw people arguing online about the show, and people were arguing about whether it was the actor's fault or whether it was the script's fault. To be fair to these kids, they might not be very good, but they're not being given a whole lot to work with either, as is evidenced by the fact that none of the other performers seem to be able to do much with the script anyways. And when you get such laughable dialogue, not just laughable dialogue, but laughable script ideas in general, everything to do with the coven when they're in the circle and when they're talking about the thread and everything like that, it's very, very hard to watch. And when I say hard to watch, I mean both physically hard to watch because the whole show is shot at permanent dusk, which is done to mask the fact that what you're looking at is almost entirely CGI environments.
Which is why
you can't see anything that's going on ever at all.
This is why it feels like a Marvel show. It's that awful color grading that looks terrible because they're hiding the CGI, and they have these awful magical sound effects which never existed in any other Star Wars that I've seen, where they're it's like, I can't even describe it. But as for laughable dialogue, there was a line delivered by one of Osha and May's lesbian birthing mothers that said, "The galaxy doesn't accept women like us." The galaxy doesn't welcome women like us. Yes. And then later on in the episode, she says, "Osha, this isn't about good or bad. This is about power and who's allowed to use it." And they reject the idea of the Force because they use it differently. And they say that the Force is about wielding power, and they have this Like, they believe that the way they use the Force and calling it a different name is good, and the Jedi use it for evil, I guess, because they're bending the rules of the universe toward their power, I guess, which is why they're oppressors.
Those are both quotes that I wrote down that were so laughably bad that I had to actually write them down.
Oh, and once May, burns down everything, and spoilers if anyone cares, I don't think you do. Once May, genocides their entire coven, basically, Osha says, "What have you done?" I hate to say this about a child, but it's just, she can't act. Like, it was laughably bad dialogue, but also she didn't deliver it with any gravitas.
Did the women who die from fire because they weren't burnt? Like, okay, yeah, I'll make the point right now. So yes, May does burn down the entirety of their living quarters that is all stone, and I don't know how fire spread across stone, an entire stone encampment. But again, this show has not taken fire very, very seriously. It's just a very simple example of all the things that could have been worked on. And again, in set design, all you have to do is put more actual fabrics up, find some way to include anything that might actually catch fire so it makes more sense with what's going on. But there's no, what I'm guessing is we're going to find out later that the witches were killed by other means. Or, again, if I'm giving them credit, my hope is that the witches were killed by other means, and they'll actually come back to that to address it, and it wasn't fire because they weren't burnt.
This show just doesn't get fire, does it?
No, it
this
doesn't.
Show has problems with fire. But I think that the worst thing about this is they have to shove every theme and every motive into your face so that you get it because they think that you're stupid. So, like, for instance, Osha, she seems like she is just instantly enamored with the Jedi, instantly idolizes them, despite the fact that she has been raised in this coven which would have basically brainwashed her to think that they are evil. But you don't just see that through her facial expressions or her actions. When the Jedi show up on Brendok, I wrote this down. She said, "The robes, how they hold their lightsabers." It made me extremely angry. Like, I know that the child is, she has simple motivations and everything, but like, we can understand what someone's facial expressions mean. Why does everything need to be explained to death and like beaten to death like that?
Done in better hands, there could have been interesting stories here about the idea of two impressionable children who want different things from life, that are looking for a path for themselves. I think they would have had to have been older to make that a more interesting story, because of when you're young, there's no agency amongst them in this situation. What befalls them is kind of like what May does. It truly does make May look like a psychopath when she decides to essentially set fire.
She was always evil, though. Yeah. Like, she was evil before Osha ever gave her a reason to be mad at her. She wanted to hurt animals. She just is a child psychopath for no reason whatsoever. And what was her motivation for burning down the coven and killing her own parents? Why?
No, it was because if I can't have you, no one can, for her sister.
Okay. I don't know. That seems weak to me. And this might seem nitpicky, but there are so many things about this episode and the other episodes that just don't make logical sense. I feel like it's getting to a point where I have to point it out. Like, why did the Jedi even show up there? I know that they're doing this because they need to test potential Padawans, but Osha is already older than you're supposed to be when you start training to begin with, which is the same mistake that they made decades later with Anakin, right? And it's stated in the movies that, there are plenty of Force-sensitive people out in distant places away from the Republic that never get discovered, and usually they are too old to be trained by the time anyone found out. So Osha would be one of those people. Like, why are they there? How did they even know she was there? Why did they lie to her mother, her lesbian birthing mothers, about why they were there when they said, "Oh, we thought this planet was uninhabited. We were just looking around." Like, why were they lying? Why are the Jedi evil? essentially? Why are they kidnappers?
That's a very good question that people are going to ask, right? Is that so? I saw people arguing online about whether the choices they've made with the Jedi in the story are just their attempts at injecting nuance into the story. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that this is a very, very good job of tearing down something that was very, very done very, very well long before. And it feels like every time they try to go into deeper dialogue, it's just being written by people that don't understand nuance at all. When you want to talk about the idea of destiny versus free will, or the idea of power and who has a right to wield power, there could be interesting stories there if they were in the hands of people who could write dialogue that actually worked. But between that and the ceremonies with the witches, which just made you laugh, they didn't draw you into the story at all. The cinematography wasn't just flat. What I've realized is that there's no contrast to any of it. There's no actual depth to any of what you're seeing because it's so dark that it has to hide all of the ways in which what you're looking at is either like a matte painted set or done with CGI. There isn't a lot of action that necessitates excessive CGI in the scene. It's just so wide and fake that it has to be at permanent dusk to keep you from asking questions.
Incredibly uninspired and generic looking, and that's how the dialogue is as well. And I mean, the amount of dialogue that is based on presupposed knowledge they already are expecting the audience to have from watching the original trilogy is insane. Like, everything that that Osha thinks about the Jedi is presupposed knowledge that the viewers have.
Correct.
Which makes no sense. And a literal plot hole is the fact that for some reason Osha and May's bedroom has a hole in the wall with a mechanical lock that goes into a cave. And like, why is that there? Other than we just needed that for the plot to keep moving.
Correct. Because if she was to get out the other way, she'd still be able to see her sister. Yeah.
It just, and also with the way that May fell down into the flames, why is she in present day not disfigured somehow, like Anakin was, for instance? Like, it literally is just because that would collapse the entire premise for the show, which is that they're identical, which caused the crime thriller or murder mystery aspect to it. Which
There's
is
a hilarious
totally
story
useless.
of like like different parenting styles between the two moms.
Like one of them is gentle parenting,
yes,
and one of them,
and was it Coral or whatever is the one that's
Coral.
not gentle parenting.
Yeah.
And it's really, really funny. And again, I think there could have been an interesting story of two kids with unique wants in life, but it would have had to have been done with better dialogue and better actors. I don't think Jodie Turner-Smith is the worst thing in the world. She's just been given absolutely laughable dialogue in scripts that don't make sense, in a script that didn't make sense in this. I thought she probably had what could have been considered a mildly reserved, stoic performance that tried to inject a certain level of gravitas into what she was doing, but what you're hearing is so incongruous that it just doesn't work. This is the first episode where we talked before about how Master Soul, I thought that Lee Jung-jae was actually the best part of episode 1 and 2. I thought he was the only one that managed to put any level of class into the language, into the dialogue that he was given. In this episode, he was given more complex dialogue, and I did see at least a little bit of the trouble he might have been having with English not being his first language to deliver his lines. But still, him and Jodie Turner-Smith were the only ones that really had any sense of gravitas. Even Carrie-Anne Moss just seemed like she didn't really want to, like she was there for the paycheck. Maybe no. Again, this could be that she just was there for the paycheck, or this is a fault of the director who had no idea how to pull a better performance out of her. Like her character, between her single appearance in episode 1 and now, it's just a wet blanket, and it's supposed to be stoic or calm and reserved and assured, but it's just boring. It feels just flat.
Feels pointless and feels boring because this entire episode was pointless. We never needed this entire episode of Flashback for things that have already been exposed through dialogue in the last 2 episodes. And the fact that they tried to leave it off on a cliffhanger with the reveal that, wow, May is alive. We already found that out in the first episode and the second episode. That's supposed to be our cliffhanger when, you know, this episode could have just been in the present day as she's continuing on her killing spree to the next Jedi.
Or if they would have had some balls, they would have done this as the first episode, but they wouldn't have had the balls to do this and not introduce the Amanda Stenberg's version of these characters until...
At the very least, like, there's a point in this episode where you cut to present day, but the entire thing was flashback because they were acting like it's new information that May was alive. They're acting like it's new information that Osha lived.
It could have been done in a way where in episode 1, this is just baseline off the top of my head, where you cut between the flashbacks of what happened to them on their past planet, intercut between scenes of Osha and May, Osha on the ship and May, you know, going after Indara and going between them. Don't even get to, was Master Tobin, he was in episode 2, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what you do is you intercut the flashbacks of them. Maybe you don't start at the very beginning and you get rid of the whole weird thing they have to do with what's being explained to the kids by Mother Anicia, and you just start from where the Jedi are there. They're already on the planet, and you cut between what's going on there and then what's going on in current year between the two ships, and you finish episode 1 with the death of Indara.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's too late for that now. I think that they just realized they completely collapsed the murder mystery plot, and they still had 8 episodes to go, and they're just kind of keeping it chugging along.
And even then, and even if you cut between the two of them, it still gives it away because you're seeing both of them. Right. You're not just seeing May. Like, you could even do a thing where you don't even get to, again, people are gonna, if people watch this, they're gonna rip apart my off the top dialogue. It's like you could wait to show Osha until episode 2 and focus only on May without naming who it is. So at least then there's some mystery about what the hell is going on. That make sense?
Yeah, it makes more sense than whatever the hell I just watched.
Or even
they chose to waste an entire episode.
Or even then, what you do is you cut between them, and then people, based on the behavior of May, assume it's May, but you find out that somewhere along the line it's Osha that goes bad and make her the one who's going after. I don't know. I'm just saying there's other ways that they could work to make this more interesting than shoving a bunch of weird modern politic into it with witches like us and expecting people to think of this as Star Wars.
Well-behaved women rarely make history.
Well-behaved witches rarely get offered the Force.
Love that.
Yes.
But overall, what would you rate?
Look, I don't.
It's
think
currently at 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. Still dropping.
I have no ratings for you guys. If you're watching it right now, you either you love it and that's fine, or you hate watching it. I would encourage you to just make your decision based on the episode before. We're in a bit of a unique situation because we're reviewing these here on this channel, but I'm guessing that what we think doesn't really matter. What matters is what the audience thinks, and I think that those numbers, those viewing figures are going to go down, down as it goes on. An episode like this definitely didn't help.
Yeah, let us know if you guys want us to review the next episodes. I am looking forward to it.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.